Tyler, the Creator, is proving with each release he puts out that he is a unique creative in the world of music. And it's not just hip-hop. It's not just going to be confined to the world of rappers. He is a unique force, an incredibly creative mind in the world of all genres. In the modern day, he is a one-of-a-kind artist and always has something interesting to say. Yes, we love to bring up his first couple of releases every time he puts something out to discredit him as an artist and bring up those lyrics. And yes, those releases were not good. Tyler himself doesn't even like those albums anymore. I'm sure he would agree that he kind of wants to just leave that behind. But let's not forget, he was, playing a character in those days. He was playing an edgelord in those days. And it will never detract from the artist he has become today. The maturity, the growth, seeing from where he once was to where he is now is truly one of the most wonderful artistic growths of any artist of any genre, actually. Going from a goblin to an Igor or a bastard to a Call Me If You Get Lost is unthinkable, really. I don't think anybody during those days would have thought he'd be here now, but we should have never ruled him out. He always had the talent, and as far back as Wolf, he's been making excellent music and is on an incredible run now of 4 albums, from Flower Boy to Igor, Call Me If You Get Lost, to now Chromakopia. I know people might be a little bit annoyed to leave out Cherry Bomb. I still would say it's a weak part of his discography, and from being honest, you could see what he was trying to do. I think we needed Cherry Bomb to get to Flower Boy. I think that album is important for his discography and for his artistic vision. I really do. But Flower Boy, Igor, Call Me If You Get Lost, and now Chromakopia, what a run of albums. And yeah, spoiler alert, Chromakopia is included in this because he's done it again. He's dropped another great album. Why is it great? Well, let's talk through it. And there's a multitude of reasons as to why this album is great. Firstly, the diversity, the different styles and array of sounds that he channels through this album just kind of gives us the best of all sides of Tyler. You're getting songs that sound like they could have popped up on Flower Boy, you're getting songs that could have popped up on Igor, you're getting songs that could have popped up on Wolf, you're getting songs that could have popped up on Call Me If You Get Lost. It's basically a culmination of everything he's put out. Not really a concise sound from start to end, but most Tyler albums don't have that anyway, really. It doesn't detract from how good it is. Another reason is just the lyrical themes, the emotion that's poured into this album. Tyler is really opening up his heart and just letting everybody enter it and hearing his thoughts, his emotions, everything he's thinking about, all of his insecurities, everything is just being poured into this album, and it's just incredibly real. It's just so real to hear an artist be so honest and open like this. And yeah, it's just provided for such a great experience. Chromakopia is an album that fixates on light. The light that comes from within us. Sometimes we don't realize that. Sometimes we think the light can shine onto us from other things. But at the end of the day, the light comes from within us. It may be dimmed. It may be darkened at times. But that is truly where we shine, really. It's from us. It comes from us. The title, Chromakopia, shout out to Dissect Podcast as well for pointing this out. Chroma meaning light, copia being abundance. That is what this album is essentially putting out there to the world. This idea that Tyler's light is coming from within, and his mother is essentially the person that reveals that light. Tyler isn't always able to see it in himself, but she will find it and bring it out and remind him that nobody can ever stop you from being you. A really beautiful theme that's explored throughout this album really well, and I think really exists due to the fact that Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers exists as well, which I know some people might be like, oh no, a Kendrick Glazer, you always have to make it about Kendrick. But watch the interview from a couple of years ago where Tyler is so just besotted and infatuated with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers existing. He cannot really believe that an album like that from such a mainstream artist came out into this world and is as good as it is and reveals the sort of darker sides of Kendrick and is so honest and open about it, and reminds us that these people that we idolize are also just people and have flaws and have made mistakes themselves. And I think that very reason is what brings us to this album. I think that inspiration is exactly why Tyler made this album himself, because throughout this album you're hearing a lot of stories, you're hearing Tyler talk about his own life and so many things that are going on within it. And again, he's really honest and open with the emotions about it as well. I don't think Mr. Morale is exactly the same as this album. I don't think both the albums achieve the same thing, but I think the existence of that album is a massive influence on Chromakopia here. Saint Chroma perfectly introduces the album. You've got that whispery vocal that kind of builds up. The sort of like tribal stomping beat sounds great as well. It just like is about to lead to something that is just you don't really know, and it just gets you so pumped up. And then you get to that explosion of the instrumental. Of course, just really creative production choices coming from Tyler as always. The way he keeps talking about how he's got the light inside of me, the Daniel Caesar vocals, which sound absolutely heavenly as well, where he's, you know, repeating the refrain, can you feel that light, can you feel that fire? And Tyler's obviously talking about the light within him, and just kind of like feels like the fire is building up with the song, and it's like Daniel Caesar is singing that to you to be like, can you feel it? It's about to really burst. It's really cool. It's a great introduction track. The rat-a-ta that comes right after, the beat is so grimy, the beat is just so Biggest in the City after Kendrick as well, a nice little reference to Kendrick Lamar as well. There's a couple of references throughout this album too, which I'll get to, but yeah, this track again just kind of carries on that like really explosive cinematic feeling with just a really like outrageous banger that would have made it onto Call Me If You Get Lost. But you needed Saint Chroma as an introduction track with the Can You Feel the Light, Can You Feel the Fire, to kind of set you up for what you know is about to come. But after Rat-a-ta-ta, you've got the Noid track. Now Rat-a-ta ends with I'm Paranoid, and then the next track is essentially the theme of that song, being paranoid over and over again. Now this is the point of the album where you're starting to get themes that are essentially showing us that the light within him is being dimmed. And in this particular case, it's about how people can be really inappropriate and overstep boundaries, and perhaps even like stalking Tyler Creator, wanting pictures all the time, wanting to get all up in his face when he's just like not really here for that. He just wants privacy. And the funny line in the track as well where he says about how like he's got more chance of being in the NBA than getting privacy. Someone's keeping watch, someone's in my shadows, all of these lyrics with this really like strange obscure sample that brings the track into such a really odd experimental like odyssey. Honestly, like it's a very Tyler Creator song. You can see why people have this like perception of him being like a weirdo and stuff. It's very dismissive, it's not fair. Its music is super creative and super enjoyable to me. I think just, you know, boiling down his music to being like that is harsh, but like who else is making a beat like this? It's got this like really like explosive rock sound, but then it kind of like meanders into something totally different by the second half. It's just such a unique sounding song. But yeah, very much again, the light within him isn't being able to kind of prosper when there are people that are just sucking that out of him and making him feel so paranoid. And that celebrity status is becoming more common to hear now. You know, you heard Chappell Roan making videos about how she was just so fed up with people like just coming like up in her face, overstepping boundaries, when it's just like, this isn't normal. Like, you just don't do this to any ordinary person, and that can be a real like trigger and massive point of insecurity and anxiety for people. And of course Tyler Creator is talking about it here too. Now from Darling I onwards, his mother starts to make a more prominent appearance on this album, on this track, sending a really great message of basically just, Tyler, never tell a woman you love her if you don't mean it. Like, do not treat girls that way. This is not good for us to hear this from people who we might adore or be falling in love with ourselves. And then the rest of the track is basically Tyler essentially being open and honest again, that authenticity coming through, where Tyler is just like, I keep falling in love. I do not know how to commit to one person. The idea of forever is scary. Is forever too long? I don't know if I can keep doing this, but I just cannot for the life of me keep myself just on my own without falling in love with somebody else. And again, this kind of brings us back a little bit to the Ego album, with the sort of love triangle situation that was going on there. Of course, it was a bit of a messy situation, and this track is kind of continuing that theme a little bit, but just kind of bringing us into the world of Tyler and him being, again, really openly honest about how he struggles with the idea of just being with one person for the rest of his life. He says he'll just be alone with his Grammys eventually, because the idea of just being with one person, it just doesn't seem like it's possible for him. And I feel like everybody's had this insecurity at some point, unless you're incredibly lucky and you met somebody like really young before those insecurities could steep in, before the idea of being single and everybody else surrounding you getting into relationships and you're the only one on your own. Like, if you never had that and you just fell in love really young and you stayed with that person for the rest of your life, then fair play to you. But most people don't have that. And I feel like the idea of this song is incredibly relatable for a lot of people. But it's also important for the theme of the album and hearing some of the tracks that come later on too, which we'll get to. But yeah, the sound of this track is fantastic as well. Super funky, super fun. The chorus from Tizo is great. Like, Tizo sounding fantastic here. Only Tyler can bring out the best of Tizo Touchdown. Sorry, Tizo, I'm just not a big fan. Hey Jane, bringing us a really interesting story here of Tyler again, revealing his flaws, showing that he's not this perfect person, this idol that his fans might worship him to be. He's a normal person who has made mistakes. At the start of the song, his mother comes through again, reminding him, look, please just make sure you always wear a condom. Do not have unprotected sex, because it could lead to this, which I think might be the only time we've ever heard this story from Tyler. I don't think he's ever revealed this anywhere else. But again, this album is very much a place where he's revealing some of these things a little bit more to us. And yeah, what a story this one is. I mean, he meets a girl that he can relate to. They both don't have fathers that are in their lives, so they feel like they connect in that kind of way. And they have sex and she gets pregnant, is seemingly the theme of the story here. Which at first is a bit surprising, because I was like, oh man, like, whoa, this is a really interesting story that I wasn't expecting. But yeah, Tyler is very much just going through the motions here, talking through this story in a really great way as well. Like, I think he really does tell the story incredibly well. It's a really more subdued track, doesn't have the kind of explosive production qualities some of the other ones do, but he's just kind of being more upfront, more earnest, and just straight to the point with this one. And yeah, he tells the story from her perspective as well, how her body's changing. Like, he understands the situation here and has the emotional capacity to understand how it would make her feel. But he just feels like the foundations aren't there, and if they raised a child in these circumstances, the child wouldn't have a good life, and it would just be not the right way to go about it. It's a really, 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 like, complex song that has so many things going on with it. But goddamn, shout out to Tyler for really pulling through a fantastic story here, because it really is heartbreaking to listen to. I Killed You, again with this idea of your light being dimmed, this time however from society, and society dimming your light, because Tyler is talking about his hair and how he has to kind of always change it, or how he has to always do something different with it to fit society's expectations and society's stereotypes of black people's hair as well, trying to like mold what black people should do with their hair, that kind of thing. I'm not going to speak on this too much, because obviously I'm not a spokesperson for this, and I'm not going to pretend like, you know, oh, I know what this is about. Obviously, I'm not really equipped, of course, to speak about this. But it's a really interesting track, and again, I do think it still fits that idea of your light being dimmed here. Take Your Mask Off, again, explores this idea in a very different way, where he's basically saying how we, throughout our lives, will always wear a mask, And Tyler, of course, on this album cover and throughout this rollout, which has been fantastic, by the way. I didn't even mention the promo and stuff, but the promo has been brilliant for this album. Yeah, he's wearing a mask, and he's kind of essentially hiding who he is. And he says even on stage recently in a live show that he felt like the only time he could be himself was wearing a mask. The album where he probably reveals the most about himself, he still felt he had to wear a mask to show people who he truly was, which is really depressing, but a really profound way to put it as well. Because again, it's really hard to be your true self all the time because of, again, people and society maybe expecting things of you. You're having to put up fronts, you're having to hide certain aspects of yourself, you're having to put on a bit of a bravado to make people like you, people please. And I think this song is essentially about that, even though I have seen a few things about people saying, is it about Kanye? I think I saw even somebody say it might be about Drake. I'm not entirely sure if these are accurate or just massive reaches, because I think it's really speaking to us all. He's probably talking to himself here as well. It isn't just about one person. He even says at one point as well, you ain't got a lie to kick it. Oh no, sorry, his mother says that in the track, which I think was really clever, because it's again a bit of a Kendrick throwback. You ain't got a lie to kick it on the track from To Pimp a Butterfly, of course. Again, that Kendrick influence was really coming through on this album. But yeah, just very much being about how you shouldn't have to be somebody else that isn't you. Let your own light shine. Take the mask off and let your light shine and be yourself. Now, perhaps I'm missing something, but I don't necessarily think this theme is consistent throughout the album. I don't think every track necessarily explores it in the way it possibly could have been done, but it might just be that I need to sit with it even more, because I've sat with it quite a lot already now, but there might still be a few things that I'm missing with the themes here, because Judge Judy didn't really give me that kind of vibe. I thought the singing on this track was actually a little low quality and is a little hard to really get into. I think Tyler has always been a vocalist that isn't the most proficient or necessarily the most technically gifted, but I still think he finds ways to make his vocals work. I think on this track, the elongated Judge Judy gets a little irritating. And again, maybe missing something here, but I don't really know how it fits the overall vibe of the album. I'm not sure. Sticky, I think, does, although it does it in a way that you wouldn't pick up on initially. I think this track is just really being your unapologetic self and just being braggadocious, letting all of that come out and not really having to compromise or change yourself for anybody else. I think this is very much accompanied well with having Glorilla and Sexy Red on the track, who are two artists, particularly Sexy Red, who gets a lot of backlash for being unapologetic and being just who she is, because a lot of people don't really like her lyrics. A lot of people don't really like how in your face she can be with her lyrics, and I think having these features on this track, again, Glorilla fits this too, very much does become basically about, nah, we're just going to be ourselves here. This is going to get sticky, this is going to get messy, but we're just going to let it happen anyway. And to be fair to the track, it is a bit of a banger. Like, this is a hard banger. The production gets pretty manic in places. You got Lil Wayne coming through again. Let's be honest at this point, we just need a whole album from Lil Wayne produced by Tyler, because when has Lil Wayne ever missed on a Tyler feature? Like, every single time they collaborate, it is just fantastic. Lil Wayne, just let Tyler do your whole album. It would probably be up there, one of your best, let's be real. And that's not to hate on Lil Wayne, he has a lot of really good albums, but I really do think he would work on a full album of just Tyler production. So while that one isn't necessarily as clear cut, I still think it fits the overall message of the album. Thought I Was Dead is an interesting track. I think this one is just essentially Tyler doing his usual kind of like straight up rapping track, and has Schoolboy Q on here, which by the way is a bit of a short verse. It needs to be longer for me. I love what he was doing on the track, but I would have just liked to have seen him come on a little bit longer. But yeah, overall, I really like the beat here. I like some of the sort of lyrics, which again might be poking at the idea of other people trying to take your light away by, like, you know, the perception of him, and the culture vultures always talking about his old lyrics and bringing up all that kind of stuff, and how There's white rappers that are just kind of entering this lane and doing it really badly. He's talked about this in interviews, bringing up rappers like Ian, or what perceived to be sounding like he was talking about Ian. It wasn't necessarily clear cut. But again, yeah, is that the light being stolen from hip-hop culture? Maybe a little bit, I don't really know. We've seen this topic get brought up quite a bit this year, though, through the Kendrick-Drake beef, where Kendrick was basically coming for Drake as being a culture vulture himself and taking parts of hip-hop away from the genre and making it less, authentic for Drake's own gain. I think Tyler is also on that same side of the argument, because I think on some of the lines here he's very much talking about that being taken away from hip-hop. But even still, I think some of the tracks I was speaking about there, particularly Judge Judy and Thought I Was Dead, are harder to kind of put into this album and really extrapolate what their theme is in context with the whole overall theme. But still, doesn't make them bad tracks. I still, to an extent think they're really good as well, particularly Thought I Was Dead. But yeah, Tomorrow, I want to mention this track as well, because after Hey Jane being earlier on the album, Tyler essentially brings his mother back again and has that voice note snippet at the start talking about how she really wants grandchildren. And Tyler, the idea of that just scares him so much. The idea of having kids and how he's feeling like he's starting to get older now, and how he feels like he's, aging. He's just struggling to come to terms with the idea of having children, and tomorrow is just scaring him. The worry, the insecurity of tomorrow just really hits hard. But again, the production on this track is so well produced. It's just so well done. It's so good. I have to mention Like Him though. We really hit a point of this album where it really peaks for me, where you've got this track up there, maybe one of his best ever. I mean, there's a few on this album that I think could be in that conversation, but goddamn, this is one of the most stunning songs we have ever heard from Tyler, the Creator. It is just wow. The production, it's honestly kind of Stevie Wonder, like the way this track comes together. It really is, and that is a high praise to give Tyler, because I know he's a big fan of Stevie, and I'm a massive fan of Stevie as well, but goddamn, he really captures some of that essence on here. His mother again comes through, talking about how he looks so much like his dad, but Tyler is talking about his dad as if he's a ghost that he can't even see, he can't even catch, he can't even really imagine, because he doesn't know his dad. He doesn't really know much about his dad at all. And yeah, he's just questioning throughout this track, how much am I really like him? Am I, how much do I really look like him? It's just such a sad song, and it's just done so beautifully. Like, god damn. And it pairs up with a track that came out a long time ago on the album Wolf, which is Answer, which we had a very similar theme coming through on that track, where he's talking about wanting to pick up, talk to his dad, hoping he'll pick up the phone, want to talk to him. He has so many things to say, some things angry, some things just sad, some things hurt, that he just wants to say to his dad. And we get that theme kind of coming full circle on this track, on this album here, where he finally gets to know a little bit more about the reasons as to why he doesn't really have a relationship with his dad. And it becomes at the very end of the song where his mother says, like, I have to admit, your dad is actually a good man. I made mistakes when I was younger. It was really on me as to why this has all gone a bit wrong, but I promise you it is my fault, and your dad is a good person, which is just so heartbreaking. Maybe that light from within would have shined brighter for Tyler throughout his life if he did have that relationship with his father. And maybe these insecurities wouldn't be so strong. Maybe some of these things that he's openly honest about on this album would have never happened. But he does also say on the song Answer that actually the reason why he's become so successful is because his dad was never around, because it's kind of like a butterfly effect, really. Would Tyler Creator be Tyler Creator if he'd had that relationship with his father all this time? But at the same time, would he be more, I guess, happy within himself? Would those insecurities not be as strong if he did have a relationship with his father? It's a really complex, kind of double-edged sword, really, that I think he at least is able to come to terms with on this song. But yeah, immediately after you get Balloon, which is just like there's like fairground, silly, sort of clowny sounding song. I mean, Doechii comes through with one of the most fun verses of the year. You can't really hate on Doechii at the moment. She's having a really good time. She's always good for features, and of course had a pretty decent album as well. But yeah, this track just seems so out of place to me, but I like how it's just fun. Maybe that's the point of it coming after. It's like having those moments where you kind of ground yourself and you have to experience those emotions, but then immediately after you can just go back to normal and be your silly fun self. I don't really know, but it is a bit random. Hope you find your way home closes out the album with a pretty beautiful sentiment. It's pretty simple, this one, very much again maybe talking to himself here about how he just hopes that he will find his way eventually. Of course, the light comes from within, gets repeated towards the end of the track from Tyler again here, that line coming out, reminding himself that the light, the chroma, it is from himself. He can, you know, shine his own light, and while there are other things that have impacted him, you know, don't forget that, and don't let his mother's words ever be lost on him too. He needs to take those seriously and remember that the light comes from himself. So yeah, I've rambled a lot. This is a very, very long review, an uncharacteristically long review from me, but there was a lot to say. Tyler always brings so much to the table that it's hard to not touch on as much as you can. I mean, I probably missed some things as well, but I just felt like there was a lot to say here. I feel Tyler artistically is just at a really high level at the moment. I think the authenticity that shines through on this album, I think, is really admirable. You know, again, he's not telling us about how great he is. He's not bragging this whole album like you would hear from a lot of rappers, and that's not hating on other rappers. Of course, that's an okay thing to happen within the genre of hip-hop. But again, with Mr. Morale coming out a few years ago and Tyler being inspired by that, he has brought together an album here where he shows some of his flaws and becomes honest with himself and the things that have happened to him in his life, and presents it really interestingly and authentically as well. And that is another thing I want to mention here. Authenticity is winning in music at the moment. This album has done really well in the first week numbers. First day streaming numbers were like record breaking. It was one of the highest we've ever seen of any genre. It's become an album that's going to like potentially do like 300k first week or something like that, and sales aren't an indicator of quality all the time, but it is just going to show that we're really like wanting those deep authentic moments from artists at the moment. We want artists to be revealing themselves. We want them to talk about their flaws. We want them to just not sing about partying and dancing. Like, this is becoming a bit of a trend, and again, like with Charlie XCX earlier this year, authenticity is seemingly winning, and that is great to see, and that is interesting to see, and it's inspirational as well, I think, for a lot of people out there to be hearing tracks that are so upfront and honest. So yeah, admirable. Appreciate what Tyler did here, and I think overall it's a great album. I'm not sure it entirely perfectly comes together in terms of its themes. I think it's not quite as sharp, or it's not quite as tidy with some of the songs. It could have maybe been a bit stronger, but even still, this is up there as another great album from Tyler for me. 8.5 out of 10. I think it's got some of his most unique tracks to date. It's exciting, it's varied. Yeah, one of the best rap albums of the year easily, and one of the best albums of the year as well. So that is it from me. Before I ramble on even further, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would love to see what you guys think. Do subscribe if you haven't already. If this is the first time you're watching, please stick around. Let me know your thoughts on what I think of the themes, if you agree with me, if there's anything I missed or anything you think differently. Anything in the comments, would love to see. Do have a good day, and goodbye.